We'll have to start over.
Oh, you're live, you're live.
Am I live now? Every time I push live, it says it's not working and I start over. Anyway, hello everyone and thanks for joining me today. I have an assistant here with me today who wishes to remain anonymous, but you'll see in a few minutes why he's going to be very helpful to have around. In today's live broadcast, I want to show you how to block a beautiful lace shawl. This one happens to be a brand new free knitting pattern that will be available on my website later today. It takes 1 hank of Be So Fine yarn, and this particular colorway is Cranberry Frost that I hand painted here in my Florida studio. It's a 1 hank project, and here's how much is even left over from the hank that I knit the shawl with. Before we get started, what I wanted to show you, what I like to do is I like to weave in the ends on a shawl first. And what that means with a 1 hank project is you really only have 2 ends to weave in. I've already wound the end in here, and I'm going to weave in the end from the beginning now. Oh, if I can find my yarn needle, there it is. So a few tips and tricks for weaving in ends on lace. It's not nearly as easy as it is on worsted weight. It's a lot easier to fit your yarn in between the stitches. So what you want to do is just really gently weave in, going back and forth, just kind of duplicating the stitches as you go, and try to change direction as often as possible. When we start blocking, my assistant is going to turn the camera so it faces down, and at that point I want you to know that I will be able to still answer your questions live because he's going to be watching along and giving me your questions if needed. So don't worry, even if you can't see me talking, I'll still be able to read comments if needed, or questions. And of course, if you're watching the recorded broadcast of this, no worries, I get notifications of every comment after the broadcast, so I'm able to answer even if you watch this in the recorded version. Okay, so I have both of my ends woven in, and so the next step is going to be to give it a very quick bath, and I'm using Rapture, my all-natural delicate wash, and some room temperature water. So we're going to start with a cap. It's highly concentrated, all natural, non-toxic, and it has it's also a no rinse formula. So I'm going to put it in the bowl. Would my assistant like to turn the camera down, please? Thank you. A little bit more. A little bit more. A little more. Okay, good. Okay, so we'll give that a little swish around, and we'll add the shawl to the water. Now again, if you're using a worsted weight yarn, it takes a little longer to get the water to absorb into the yarn, but with a fingering weight yarn like this, it doesn't take long at all, so you won't really need to keep this in the water for very long. But while I'm doing this, I would love to be able to answer any questions, so would my assistant please read some of the comments? I see there's some here. I think someone said something about sheets. Yes, Rapture is amazing for sheets. I love to wash my sheets in it as well. It's great for all your delicate items, bikinis, bathing suits, athletic wear, dry fit, anything that has elastic. All of my silk blouses or even my thin cotton blouses, I love to hand wash in Rapture. It's even great for an upholstery fresh up. You can add it to water with in a spray bottle, and it's fabulous for upholstered furniture as well. So we'll let that soak for just another minute longer. You go to my professional page, hand me your phone and I'll look it up. Where are you? All right, I'm still helping my assistant. 1 second. My hands are too wet. Here we go. Okay, there you are. There. So go down to the comments now. Okay, so now once you've had the shawl soaking for a bit, you want to squeeze out the excess water, but do not wring it. The one thing you don't want to do, turn your volume down please. The one thing you don't want to do is wring it because you can manipulate the stitches, you can twist them, or you can make them get damaged. So you want to just squeeze the water out without wringing, and then you want to put it into a towel. So I'm going to lay this towel out flat, and I'll lay the shawl out. Okay, and we're going to fold the towel in half lengthwise, and then we're going to roll it up. And then once we roll it up, I'm going to use some pressure and squeeze as much water out as I can with my body weight. Because the towel is dry, it will absorb as much moisture as it can with the pressure of my hands. And by pushing in one direction without wringing or agitating, I'm not going to damage the yarn or the stitches at all. Are there any questions? Do you see any questions? Okay. Thank you to everybody who has joined me today. I hope you can find some benefit in the questions. Or, I'm sorry, I hope you can find some benefit in this tutorial. Okay, so now our shawl is damp, but definitely not dripping wet anymore. And now you want to line it up along your blocking mat. There are several different types of tools you can use, but because I don't have a fixed place where I block pieces, I like to use these blocking mats because I can put them together to any size that I need, and I can place them anywhere I need them. So for today, I've got 6 squares wide times 2 rows, and then 4 squares wide for the 3rd row, because the top of the shawl is going to be the widest, and the bottom, because of the curve, will need the length in the middle and not on the corners. So we'll start at the top, and what I like to do is try to get a nice straight edge for the top of the shawl, and then I'll be showing you the most important part, which is how to get a nice, even, smooth edge along the curved point. So what we're going to start with is some non-rusting T-pins. And I'll start by lining up the center of my shawl with the center seam on the pads. And I don't want to pull, but I want to make sure that it's just taut as I move this to the side and get a straight edge. And unfortunately, this particular shawl is larger than the camera shot that I have, so please forgive me if I go off camera, but I'll explain to you what I've done when I come back on. And what you'll see here is I've actually got a shawl that is slightly bigger than even my blocking boards, but what I can do is when this is closer to being dry, I can steam block those edges as well. So I'm going to come over here now and do the other side, other top edge. And I will come back in and get more detailed in this, but this is just to get started. Got to start somewhere, right? Are there any questions? Do you see any questions? No? Okay. Is there a question? Oh, oh, so you do want people to know who you are. So Marlon is my assistant today. We just got home from a tennis tournament late yesterday afternoon, so he gets the day off of tennis today. He's actually doing homework, and I bribed him to take a little break from homework to be my assistant for this tutorial. So, hi Marlon, thanks for joining us. And thanks to everyone else who's here as well. Okay, here's where the really great tips come in for this particular shawl, for this particular tutorial. And that is that what we're going to be doing is, what yarn is it? It's Be So Fine yarn, which is a yarn that I make and sell on my website. And this is a one-hank project using Be So Fine yarn in Cranberry Frost colorway, which I hand painted here in my Florida studio. It comes in 17 hand-dyed colorways, and I think I have 4 or 5 of my hand-painted ones that I do by hand here. Okay, so now we're going to start at a center point. So what I've decided to do is, you see how we have zigzag lines in this particular stitch pattern? What I've decided is I want to scallop at the points of these. So my 2 points here for the bottom of the shawl, the very bottom, are right here. So I'm going to pull on those pretty taut from the center of the shawl here. And now what I want to do is go to the midpoint. So what do I mean by the midpoint? And I mean halfway from the corner edge up here to that corner that I just pinned. I'm going to do my next pinning. And again, I want to scallop at those eyelet points. So I'm going to scallop here and here. Okay, so now that I've done these 2 points, I want to go to the midpoint between them. So I'm going to come here. And the reason why I do this is because it is almost nearly impossible to eyeball this and to just start one spot and pin, 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 pin. Once you're done, you'll do an overhead shot and look at it and you'll go, oh my God, that is nowhere near the shape I want it to be. It's just impossible to do it on your own with eyeballing. So it's much better to pick a spot in the center and then pick a spot at the edge and then work your way through midpoints to keep it all nice and even. And even doing it this way, once we get closer to the end, I may still want to repin a few areas, but it gives me the most accurate shape of any technique I've ever done for shaping shawls. Now, this is how you block it for the original blocking of the shawl, but if you wash the shawl or when you wash it in the future after you've worn it, you're also going to want to do this again. Okay, so you see I've got this whole area scalloped now. So I'll come over here to this side and I'll do the midpoint here. Let's see, that's... If you didn't want to scallop this, you would be putting pins a lot closer together, and that way you could get a very smooth edge along the this bottom edge of the shawl. I happen to particularly like scalloped edges, so even though this lace pattern doesn't give me a scallop, I'm able to force a scallop by pinning this way. I also use an extremely stretchy bind off when I bind off a shawl from the bottom like this. And that's where I add a yarn over in between each bind off stitch. And when you go get the free pattern later today, you'll see what I'm talking about. It is absolutely my favorite way to bind off shawls because not only does it give you lots of stretch along the edge so that you can block the lace out and see all of the beauty of the negative space between the stitches, but it also gives you a little extra ease if you want to manipulate an edge that you don't already have. Like for example, a scallop if the stitch pattern doesn't create a scallop. Okay, so we'll try now to move this again and get another area. So over here now we're at, remember we've got that little piece dangling off here. It's not a problem. I'm going to be able to steam block this after it dries. So now we're over here and we're going to go from midpoint to the midpoint between the last 2 pins, and that'll be right here. Okay, now it looks like I haven't done that evenly, so I'll just repin these a little bit. And I also notice if something's a little bit stretched out a little longer than the others, then you can repin to adjust as well. Okay, that's looking better. Okay, we'll come over here now to a midpoint. Should be about here. I'm probably just about 2 blocking mats shy of having the perfect size here, but I think you can still get the idea. Another way that you can block is if you use fresh dry towels and do this on a carpeted floor. That's another way to do it. But if you have any pets, make sure that you keep the door closed while it's drying. Okay, I'm going to turn this around now so I can get the last part done. Whoops. Okay, so now we're going to go to our midpoint between the last 2 areas that were pinned. and then we'll go to the next midpoint. Oh, thank you, Eliza. I'm glad you like it. I know you did a different shawl of mine last week, and this was the video I was telling you about that I thought would be very helpful for you to use when you go to block your new shawl. Okay, so now that edge is done, and now I can lift this up. Would my assistant come back over for a second, please? Oh, actually, now I can pin on the top edge a little bit more. See how it's scalloped a little bit? I don't really want this top edge scalloped. So now that I've got everything tightly pinned, I'm going to come back in here, and anything that looks too scalloped, going to pin a little. Oh, hi Myra, I'm glad you're here. Thank you, I'm glad you like it. If anybody has any questions, please feel free to ask me. Okay, and so we're just going to pin along this top edge a little bit more so we lose the scallop along here. If you have blocking wires, that is another great tool to use at this point. What you can do is thread a very thin metal wire along any edge that you want to remain straight, and then pin that wire so that you get a perfectly straight edge. I have used them in the past, and I think that they are incredibly helpful. Sometimes I just prefer to do everything by hand. What a surprise, right? Okay, so now if my assistant will lift the camera back up, I can show you what the shawl looks like. Blocked. A little more. Oh, down a little bit. Okay. And here we have, this is a multi-lace sampler shawl done in one hank of Be So Fine yarn in hand-painted colorway Cranberry Frost. The free pattern will be on my website later today, and the yarn is available now. I actually have it on sale for the holidays, and you can also, what's the question say there? No, the shawl pattern did not have a scalloped edge, but I used such an exaggerated loose bind off that you can create one in your blocking.
I assume with the shawl, does it matter if it's dipped in hot or cold water?
Yes, it should be dipped in cold water. Hot water, while it won't felt a bamboo yarn like this, it's just a good practice to always use lukewarm water so that you're not agitating the yarn. Thank you, I'm glad you like it. The yarn's available now. It's also on sale for the holidays, and you can use, so it's discounted, and you can also use coupon code free shipping to get free US shipping for a limited time. If anybody has any questions, please let me know. If you watch from the beginning, you'll see that we wove in our loose ends first. Then we gave the shawl a quick bath in Rapture All Natural Delicate Wash that's a non-toxic and no rinse formula. We expressed as much water as we could out of the shawl. Then we pinned it out on our blocking board, and now we're going to let it dry completely. Depending on where you live and the humidity level and temperature of where you live, that could be a few hours to overnight or longer. After that, you can enjoy your beautiful shawl or give it as an amazing gift. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to leave me a comment live or in the recording, because I get notifications and I can answer any of your questions anytime. The yarn's available on my website, and the free pattern will be there this afternoon. Thanks so much for everyone that took time out of their day to join me and watch this tutorial. Talk to you later.